The silver meal cart rolled forward with a soft metallic hum, plates clinking gently in the dim cabin light. Row 2A waited quietly, a father and his 3 small children, 5-year-old triplets on their very first airplane ride. "Sorry, sir," the flight attendant said, her polite smile practiced but thin. "We've run out of the children's meals." Ethan Cole looked down at his 3 little ones, Leo, Liam, and Lila, each gripping a crayon, each face slowly folding from excitement into quiet disappointment. He smiled anyway. "That's okay," he said softly. "We'll share mine." The attendant hesitated. "I'm afraid first-class entrees are limited to passengers only." The words hung heavier than engine noise. A few passengers looked over. One frowned. Another shook her head subtly. Ethan didn't flinch. He simply nodded, voice steady. "Then please, just bring one." No one realized that this man, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a gentle smile, was the CEO of the technology company that powered the airline's own booking systems. He didn't raise his voice. He was raising something else. 3 future leaders. Ethan had built his success on calm reasoning and consistency. He'd seen people collapse under pressure, but he'd learned early that the person who keeps composure wins quietly. Now he wasn't thinking about his company or profit margins. He was thinking about what his children were learning, how respect behaves when tested. Leo tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, we can share your food." "It's okay," he smiled. "That's what family means, bud." "We make do." The flight attendant moved on. The triplets went back to coloring clouds on paper napkins. And Ethan, though calm, observed everything, times, gestures, tone. He wasn't angry. He was taking notes with his eyes. He'd been underestimated before, in boardrooms, at airports, at restaurants. It no longer bothered him. What bothered him was how easily people's warmth could change depending on who they thought they were serving. He wasn't testing their service. He was testing his own patience. As the meal cart rolled toward the back, another attendant served a late-arriving passenger, a businessman who had just boarded at the last minute. A plate of perfectly grilled steak, potatoes, and greens landed in front of him. Leo noticed first. "Daddy, didn't she say they were out of food?" Ethan glanced at the plate, then at his children's eyes. Curious, innocent, honest. "Sometimes," he said softly, "people forget fairness in the middle of their job. But that's why we remember it." They nodded slowly, the lesson already beginning to form. An older woman in the next row, watching quietly, leaned forward. "You can have my plate, dear," she whispered. "The kids should eat," Ethan smiled, grateful. "Thank you, ma'am, but we'll be all right." She smiled back knowingly. "I think you already are." The flight continued in uneasy quiet. Ethan could feel glances now, from passengers who understood, from others who didn't. He turned on his tablet, opening an offline note. "Flight 217 observations." Underneath he typed, "When respect depends on appearance, service collapses." He didn't write in anger. He wrote like an engineer documenting data, calm, methodical, factual. Altitude didn't change, but attitude did. Hours later, turbulence shook the plane slightly. The lights dimmed to a soft glow. The children leaned against their father, half asleep. If you believe real power is calm, not loud, hit subscribe. Because the stories that change the world start with someone choosing grace over noise. Ethan looked out the window. The horizon streaked with pale orange light. He thought of his late wife, who used to remind him, "They'll copy how you act more than what you say." He adjusted the blanket over the triplets, whispering, "Then I better act right." The attendant returned, visibly flustered now. "Sir, I just realized there was a catering mix-up." "I'm so sorry." "I can bring a replacement meal now." Ethan shook his head gently. "No need, the flight's almost over." "But I appreciate the apology." She nodded quickly, retreating down the aisle, relief mixed with guilt. Minutes later, the purser, the senior attendant, appeared. She was composed but uneasy. "Mr. Cole, may I have a word?" He looked up, surprised she knew his name. "Of course. I just realized who you are," she said softly. "We use Helix systems for our operations. Your team built the scheduling app we rely on. He smiled faintly. Yes, but today I'm just a passenger and a dad. The purser's eyes dropped. I'm deeply sorry for how this flight began. It shouldn't have happened. Ethan replied gently. Mistakes happen. What matters is what they teach. She nodded. Understood. He didn't demand correction. He inspired reflection. The rest of the flight passed quietly. A strange hush in the air, as if the cabin itself understood something important had happened. Small, but heavy with meaning. Passengers smiled kindly at the children as they passed. Some slipping extra snacks to their tray table? One even whispered, "Your dad's a good man." They beamed. "We know." As descent began, the captain made his usual announcements, voice steady over the intercom. But then, he added something unexpected. Ladies and gentlemen, before landing, I want to acknowledge one of our passengers. Mr. Ethan Cole and his children reminded us all that courtesy isn't optional. It's the heart of service. Thank you, sir. A soft ripple of applause filled the cabin. Ethan raised his hand modestly, shaking his head, smiling. He didn't enjoy attention. He valued awareness. Through the window, clouds parted, revealing a sunlit city below, and while his kids clapped at the sight of the runway, Ethan knew the real landing would happen after the wheels touched ground, when words became actions. The tires kissed the runway with a gentle thud, reverse thrusters roaring like distant applause. Seatbelts clicked. The cabin lights brightened. The children cheered softly, eyes wide from their first landing. Ethan smiled at them. See? Smooth endings come from steady hands. But even as laughter bubbled around row 2, a quiet unease lingered among the crew. They knew who he was now, and what he had seen. The plane touched down, but accountability had just taken off. The purser appeared beside him again. Mr. Cole, our station manager, would like a moment of your time once we deplane? Of course, he said, gathering coloring books and stuffed toys. The children swung their legs happily, unaware of the meeting awaiting their dad. When the last passenger exited, Ethan led his family down the jet bridge. The air smelled of fuel and new beginnings. At the gate, a small group waited. The captain, 2 attendants, and the ground manager. Mr. Cole, the captain began carefully. I want to apologize again for what happened on board. It doesn't reflect who we are. Ethan's tone remained measured. Then let's make sure it never does. He turned to his kids. Go stand with the nice officer for a minute, okay? Daddy has to talk grown-up stuff. They nodded and trotted toward a security agent who offered them pilot wing stickers. Sometimes, leadership means sending the next generation out of earshot, so you can rebuild the world they'll inherit. Ethan faced the crew. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to protect the culture we promised every traveler. I built Helix systems on one rule. Service should never depend on assumption. The attendants looked down, shame heavy on their shoulders. We understand, sir, one murmured. He continued, I'm requesting an internal review and full retraining for this team. You'll keep your jobs, but you'll relearn what empathy looks like. No threats, no raised voice. Just quiet clarity that felt heavier than any reprimand. The manager nodded quickly. We'll begin immediately. Ethan smiled faintly. Good. Growth is the only proper landing. He didn't ground the crew. He helped them take off again, differently. Outside the terminal, sunlight poured through glass walls, painting long gold lines across the floor. The triplets ran to him, clutching stickers. Daddy, we got wings! He crouched down to their level. Keep them safe, he said, tapping each little badge. They mean you remember to lift people, not look down on them. They nodded. Eyes serious in that way children sometimes are when they sense a big truth hiding inside simple words. Later that week, the story reached the news. Passengers had quietly shared snippets online. Headlines twisted facts. CEO fires entire crew, one claimed. Another said, airline scandal over meal mix-up. Ethan ignored them all. Instead, he released a single statement. Excellence without empathy is just efficiency wearing a mask. That quote spread faster than any rumor. The airline's executives contacted him personally. Together, they built Project Altitude, a company-wide program teaching communication, fairness, and respect in every cabin. Ethan insisted the first class include the same attendants from Flight 217. Weeks later, in a bright training room overlooking the runways, the crew stood nervously as he entered. His children waited in the back with crayons, drawing clouds. He greeted the attendants warmly. "Today isn't about mistakes," he said. "It's about the privilege of starting over with better eyes." The purser wiped away tears. "Thank you for giving us that chance." Ethan gestured toward his kids. "They watched everything that happened. When they grow up, they'll remember that we chose to fix, not to fight. Redemption always boards last, but it never misses the flight." As the session ended, one of the younger attendants knelt by the triplets. "What did you learn from your dad?" Lila grinned. "He doesn't get mad. He makes things better." Leo added, "He said calm people are the strongest." Liam chimed in, "And polite doesn't mean small." Everyone laughed softly. Even the purser smiled through misty eyes. That evening, Ethan stood by the terminal windows watching planes lift into violet skies. His reflection merged with the glass. A man, a father, a teacher of quiet revolutions. He thought of the hundreds of passengers boarding around the world, most unaware of how a small in-flight mistake had reshaped the airline's culture. He pulled out his phone and began drafting another note to himself. Never waste the moments that test you. They're the universe's training modules. A notification popped up, one of his team members sending analytics. Customer satisfaction already climbing. He smiled. Change, like flight, was powered by lift and resistance in equal measure. Resistance creates lift. That's true for planes and for people. Months passed. On a new morning flight, Ethan boarded quietly with his triplets again. The same purser greeted them, posture confident, and smiled genuinely. "Welcome back, Mr. Cole," she said. "We saved the kids' meals for last. Wanted to make sure they stayed warm." Ethan chuckled. "Looks like retraining worked," she grinned. "We learned from the best passenger we ever had." As the plane climbed through a soft sunrise, the children clinked juice cups and giggled. The meal trays arrived, 3 small plates, perfectly served, with cookies shaped like wings. Lila looked up. "Daddy, they remembered." He nodded. "Yes, honey. Because kindness leaves a mark deeper than anger. Legacy isn't what you own. It's what you model when someone else forgets how to care." Ethan glanced out the window. Clouds stretched endless, a bright sea of possibility. He took a slow breath, savoring the quiet hum of engines, the sound of progress in motion. If you believe real power is calm, not loud, hit subscribe. Because the stories that change the world start with someone choosing grace over noise. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising at 35,000 feet. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the view." Ethan smiled at his children, already asleep against his arms. Outside, sunlight turned the wings silver, steady, shining, unshaken. True leadership, he thought, isn't about altitude or applause. It's about teaching the world that decency always deserves first class. The camera would fade there, father and children bathed in light, clouds stretching forever beyond them.